South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is set to embark on his trip to the Netherlands next week for a triple alliance with that country. The country's economy continues to show signs of a gradual recovery, driven by the chip industry and exports, says a Korean think tank. Israeli forces engage in intense fighting with Hamas in South Gaza's largest city, Khan Younis. The United Nations, meanwhile, has invoked a rarely used article to avert a humanitarian catastrophe. It's December 7th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. President Yoon Suk-yeol will be on his state visit to the Netherlands next week for a triple alliance with that country, home to ASML, a renowned manufacturer of systems used when producing semiconductor chips. His trip will be all about creating high-tech linkages to move forward in the Seoul-Amsterdam strategic partnership. Our presidential office correspondent Woo Soo-young leads us off.
South Korea will forge a semiconductor alliance with the Netherlands, along with close partnerships in green energy, defense and high-tech sectors. That's according to President Yoon Suk-yeol's office on Thursday, ahead of his trip to the Netherlands next week. First, amid geopolitical conflicts and economic instability affecting the production of semiconductors, South Korea's biggest export item, Seoul will seek to stabilize supplies of chip-making equipment for its firms. As the Netherlands is home to ASML, the world's biggest manufacturer of lithography machines used to produce over 80% of all semiconductors globally, Seoul hopes to combine Dutch equipment with South Korea's advanced chip manufacturing. With the goal of building a chip alliance across government, firms and universities, Yoon's visit will likely include deals on forming a bilateral dialogue channel on semiconductors, as well as developing joint projects. Joined by the chiefs of memory chip giants Samsung and SK Hynix, the South Korean leader will visit ASML's headquarters, becoming the first world leader to be given a tour of the Dutch company's clean room facility. Yoon's state visit to the Netherlands, the first ever for a South Korean president, comes after the two countries elevated their ties to a strategic partnership last year, agreeing to work together in crucial industries, including semiconductors, artificial intelligence and green energy.
The strategic partnership between Korea and the Netherlands will boast a security that's grounded by value-based solidarity and economic security cooperation that's based on cutting-edge technology. During this state visit, we aim to jointly respond to economic and security crises and find ways to improve supply chain vulnerabilities in strategic industries. To this end, we're discussing ways to establish a new economic and security dialogue body and hold regular consultations.
Yoon's office said the two sides will closely cooperate on common security issues such as North Korea's nuclear threats and support for Ukraine. They will also promote more exchanges and collaboration in the defense industry and emerging security fields such as the military use of AI and cybersecurity. Furthermore, Yoon's state visit is expected to solidify the groundwork for cooperation in green energy, including nuclear power plants, as the Netherlands aims to build new facilities to increase its clean energy sources. Artificial intelligence, smart agriculture and logistics will also be key agenda items.
We plan to discuss ways to establish an export base for Korean companies at the very center of European trade by utilizing the Netherlands' advanced infrastructure and logistics system.
Economic security has been at the focus of Yoon's diplomatic outreach this year, seeking new markets and business partners for South Korea's export-dependent economy. The country's outbound shipments from October have been recovering from 13 months of negative growth on the back of stronger global demand for semiconductors. Woo Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meeting business leaders today to ramp up strategies for defense industry exports, President Yoon noted the sector that's been growing noticeably fast and the ambition to become one of the world's top 4 defense exporters. Kim Do-yeon has more.
South Korea is looking to become one of the world's top 4 defense exporters by 2027 by prioritizing 5 key sectors: space, AI, integrated manned-unmanned systems, semiconductors, and robotics. That's according to the new Sustainable Defense Industry Export Promotion Strategy, unveiled by the government on Thursday at the second Defense Export Strategy meeting at Hanwha Aerospace in Gyeonggi-do Province. Presiding over the meeting was President Yoon Suk-yeol, with relevant government officials and business leaders in attendance.
방위 산업은 우리의 안보와 경제를 함께 뒷받침하는 국가 전략 산업입니다.
Promising the government's support, the president also emphasized that the government, military, and the private sector have to work together to resolve the difficulties the industry currently faces. But South Korea's defense industry has been on the rise. According to the Korea Development Institute, in 2022, South Korea exported $17.3 billion worth of arms, double compared to the year before. And while the exported items were focused on ammunition and ships, they have expanded to jets and howitzers. President Yoon also emphasized the importance of protecting the supply chain for chip-making equipment to push South Korea's defense industry harder, saying this will definitely be discussed with the Netherlands during his state visit next week.
특히 EUV 등 세계 최고의 노광 기술을 보유한 네덜란드와의 반도체 협력은 우리 방산 역량 강화에 큰 기여를 할 것이고 또 방산 수출의 새로운 기회도 마련할 수 있을 것이라고 생각합니다.
After the meeting, he met with 13 young people working in the industry, encouraging them. President Yoon underscored their importance to the nation's economy.
우리 방위 산업에 그야말로 핵심적인 역할을 하고 있는 이 청년 연구원들을 보니까 정말 든든합니다.
The young professionals share their visions in the industry and even the difficulties they face. President Yoon promised that as they are involved as a key driver to the nation's economy, they will be rightfully compensated. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Moving on, South Korea's Unification Ministry sees frequent public appearances of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's young daughter, Kim Joo-e, as an indication that she may well be next in line to rule the regime. This assessment is the first to be publicly discussed by the government here. Choi Min-jung reports.
The South Korean government is beginning to recognize Kim Jong-un's daughter Kim Joo-e as his most likely successor. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, South Korea's Unification Minister Kim Young-ho said that the North Korean leader appears to be in a hurry to put some of the spotlight on his daughter, indicating that he's trying to demonstrate his will for succession amid difficulties faced by the North. The minister's assessment comes amid growing speculation that Kim Joo-e's frequent public appearances indicate that she may well be next in line. Last week, Kim Joo-e was spotted at North Korea's Air Force Command with her father. North Korea unveiled a very rare photo showing Kim Joo-e standing in front of the North Korean leader, revealing the growing importance of her status. Another official from the Unification Ministry also said that Kim Joo-e could be the next leader. They pointed out the fact that out of the 19 public appearances she made, 16 were during military occasions, where military commanders were spotted saluting Kim Joo-e. Moreover, North Korea created the position of a first secretary 2 years ago, which was widely anticipated as a role to groom a potential successor to Kim. The position remains vacant to this day. Kim Joo-e is still young, however. Unlike his daughter, Kim Jong-un had a very limited amount of time to prepare for the succession after the death of his father, Kim Jong-il.
The reason behind Kim Joo-e's early appearance is perhaps in order to preserve the so-called Baek-doo bloodline and to establish a hereditary succession system.
However, the expert says it is still unclear whether a woman can become North Korea's supreme leader, as the regime still remains a Confucian patriarchal society. He added that having Kim Joo-e nominated as a successor could lead to a possible power struggle between her and her father, suggesting that more analysis is needed before reaching a conclusion. Choi Min-dong, Arirang News.
Top EU officials met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Thursday, marking their first in-person summit in about 4 years. While meeting the two European presidents, Ursula von der Leyen from the EU Commission and Charles Michel from the EU Council, Xi said they must jointly respond to global challenges, while von der Leyen said the bloc and its biggest trading partner must address their differences. Thursday's meeting took place as the two sides aim to repair damaged ties after they have clashed over trade and the war in Ukraine. The Korean economy appears to be emerging out of the doldrums on the back of chip exports, according to a state-run think tank. Domestic spending and investment, however, remain sluggish. An Sung-jin has more on its assessment.
Despite a slowdown in domestic demand, South Korea's recent economy has been slowly recovering, driven by the chip industry and exports. November's monthly trend report from the economic think tank, the Korea Development Institute, said on Thursday that the continuing high interest rates pulled down consumption and investment in equipment. Retail sales saw a greater on-year decline for most consumer goods, including automobiles, home appliances, food, and clothing. As consumer spending dampened, the Consumer Sentiment Index also fell by nearly 1% on-year, suggesting a possible continued sluggish consumption. However, as international oil prices fell, the pace of inflation has been gradually easing. Overall industrial production for October saw moderate growth of 1% on-year, despite fewer working days and a slowdown in sectors relying on domestic demand. Industrial production was mostly pulled up by high growth in the chip industry as chip prices started to rise. This on the back of a rise in demand for the latest smartphone models and AI server products. The boom in chip exports pushed November's total exports up 7.8% from the same month last year. Exports of chips were up 12.9% on-year. Automobile exports were also up by 21.5%. By country, the trade value of exports to the United States continued an upward trend, from a 17.3% on-year increase in October to a 24.7% increase in November. And the on-year decline in exports to China shrank from negative 9.6% in October to negative 0.2% in November. The trade balance improved from a surplus of $1.63 billion to a surplus of $3.8 billion, as the exports maintained a moderate growth and imports declined. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
With concerns over the late urea imports from China, the government is seeking alternative sources to lessen South Korean companies' dependency on a single source. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says it's looking into providing funding to help companies deal with additional costs when importing urea from Vietnam or other countries, as it costs a little more than when importing from China. Urea is a key chemical used to reduce emissions from diesel-powered vehicles, and more than 90% of that used in South Korean diesel cars comes from China. Officials say that the additional cost to import urea from other countries will be around 26 billion Korean won, which is about $20 million annually. South Korea's main rival political parties have agreed to hold an extraordinary National Assembly session starting next Monday as the regular session concludes on December 9th. The floor leaders of the ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party also agreed to convene two plenary sessions on the 20th and the 28th. The session on the 20th aims to finalize next year's budget, while lawmakers plan on processing bills related to people's livelihoods on the 28th. Meanwhile, during a plenary session tomorrow, the pro-labor yellow envelope bill and 3 revisions to the broadcasting laws, which President Yoon vetoed last week, will be put to a vote. Eyes are on whether a confirmation vote on Supreme Court Chief Justice nominee Cho Hee-dae will be held in Friday's session. Over in the Middle East, Israeli forces and Hamas militants are engaged in some of the most violent confrontations in South Gaza's largest city, Khan Younis. The head of the United Nations, meanwhile, has invoked a rarely used article to avert a humanitarian catastrophe. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Fighting intensified in southern Gaza on Wednesday as the Israel Defense Forces reached the heart of the city of Khan Younis. The Israeli military says its tanks made their way to the center of Khan Younis, and it engaged in what they said was some of the fiercest fighting of the war. Israeli offensives at the largest city of southern Gaza means thousands are now fleeing further south. Strikes were also reported in Rafah, where Gazans were told to flee by Israel. Upon reaching Khan Younis, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Wednesday that Israeli forces have surrounded the home of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, saying he is hiding underground.
Yesterday I said that our forces could reach anywhere in the Gaza Strip. Today we are encircling Sinwar's house. His house may not be his fortress and he can escape, but it's only a matter of time before we get him.
Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Wednesday invoked the rarely used Article 99 of the UN Charter to push for a ceasefire and formally warned the Security Council of a global threat from the armed conflict. In a letter to the UNSC, Guterres wrote that the armed conflict may aggravate existing threats to international peace and security. He added that he invoked Article 99 to bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter which, in his position, may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. The UN chief went on to say that the world is facing a severe risk of collapse of the humanitarian system, with the situation fast deteriorating into a catastrophe with potentially irreversible implications for Palestinians as a whole and for peace and security in the region. According to UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric, the article has not been used for decades. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
A South Korean lawyer has been elected as a new judge on the International Criminal Court. Attorney Paek Kee-bong was elected as one of 6 new judges at the ICC headquarters in The Hague, Netherlands. His term will begin next year, the South Korean Foreign Ministry said on Thursday. This is the 4th time that a South Korean national has been elected as a judge on the ICC. Founded in 2002, the court tries individuals for genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. At a time of shrinkflation, where companies keep the price the same but reduce the amount of the product, here in the country, more measures come up in response. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young is here in the studio with this topic. Good evening, Ha-young.
Great to be here, Jung-min.
Sometimes I notice this difference and sometimes I do not. So what are some examples of shrinkflation that we notice in our daily lives these days?
All right, Jung-min. So when it comes to adjusting the size or quality rather than the price of products, sometimes it could be more challenging for consumers to actually see a significant difference. And as you mentioned, shrinkflation refers to a phenomenon where manufacturers reduce the quantity while keeping everything else, including price and package design, the same. And this happens a lot, especially in the food sector. For example, a South Korean brewery reduced the volume per can in a beer bundle pack from 375 millimeters to 370. And frozen corn dogs, which used to be 5 in a pack, are now just 4. And cuts in quantity can be also found in items like frozen dumplings, canned tuna, and chips. And there's another term called skimpflation, where companies keep the prices but cut back on the quality of products or services. And as an example, one leading orange juice brand reduced its actual real juice content from 100% to 80%, but left the quality the same. And lately, there's a new term for a practice of selling bundled items more expensively than individual items called bundleflation.
Leaving the quantity the same. Then, Ha-young, shrinkflation and skimpflation aren't something new. I wonder what has brought these phenomena to the public attention these days and how are consumers reacting?
Well, the government has been making efforts to curb food inflation, food prices by managing prices for individual items. And as a result, domestic food companies withdrew proposed price increases on their products. And some experts believe that such pressure appears to have backfired, leading manufacturers to seek indirect methods of raising prices such as shrinkflation and skimpflation amid high inflation. And meanwhile, even though there is a labeling system called unit pricing, which helps consumers compare prices using a standard unit of measurement, it is still difficult for them to remember the price of each item. Now, let's take a listen to what consumers had to say.
I haven't noticed a decrease in the quantity of products, but instead I've realized that the quality of products has been reduced.
When it comes to ice cream, I'm a bit disappointed because the quantity seems much less compared to before. I'd rather pay a little more and enjoy the original amount I used to get.
This to me sounds a little bit sneaky, that not to tell the customers or still keep the same packaging, but reduce the amount in there. That's not really very fair to the customers like me who don't normally pay attention to the amount. Yeah, so I think we'll be shopping around a little bit more and paying more attention now.
And how is the authorities responding to this, to address this issue? Have any significant measures been taken yet?
Well, Jung-min, the government started an investigation into this issue at the end of last month, and in order to protect people's rights. And authorities are examining 209 processed foods and 73 other daily items for potential instances of shrinkflation, with the results expected to be announced this month. And it has decided to operate a center to receive consumers' reports to address skimpflation as well.
We'll seek to sign an agreement with companies that calls for them to give voluntary notice about smaller volume and encourage them to avoid hidden price hikes.
The Bank of Korea recently mentioned that a slowdown in domestic inflation may be further delayed due to shrinkflation. And in fact, prices for items that the government is checking for shrinkflation have turned out to be rising faster than the overall inflation rate. According to Statistics Korea, overall consumer prices rose by 3.3% on year last month. But for processed foods, a key player in shrinkflation, prices rose by over 5%. And one expert says it is the government's role to help consumers become aware of these kind of changes.
The government can't stop companies from engaging in shrinkflation. What's more important is making policies that can inform consumers when there's change so they can acknowledge it and decide if they still want to buy. Putting stickers on products that have been reduced in terms of either amount or quality is one way to do that.
Shrinkflation is also a concern in other countries as well. So in response, one French supermarket chain puts stickers right next to products to inform consumers about shrinkflation, while in Brazil, companies are required to show any changes in product quantity on the package for at least 6 months. And as Seoul's Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said, the government will propose regulations on this matter during this month. I'll bring more updates when the measures are announced.
All right, thanks for filling us in today, Hayo.
Always my pleasure.
In the lunar calendar, today is actually the third season of winter called Major Snow. However, the weather continues to be pleasant and milder than usual. Tomorrow will be as warm as early spring. Daytime temperatures in Seoul will rise to 16 degrees, with 15 degrees being the nationwide average. As daily temperature differences are huge, please try to wrap up warm. The dry conditions on the East Coast area are getting worse day by day. A dry weather and strong wind warnings have been issued, leaving a high risk of large-scale fires. It's crucial to take precautions against wildfires. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at 7 degrees. Busan will be milder at 11 degrees Celsius. By the daytime, sunshine will be ready for most regions. Highs in Seoul will get up to 16 degrees. Daejeon, Daegu, and Busan, 19 degrees. From tomorrow afternoon to overnight, a small amount of rain only in Gangwon-do province is in the forecast. Other areas will see sunny weather throughout the weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.